New Deal, Part 8. And this really is the last one, I promise. Alright. We've already covered these three things on the outline. We just wanted the pictures. So we were talking about the fact that Roosevelt's administration was seen as being more friendly towards minorities. Okay? He's not leading the March on Civil Rights, but he's not necessarily hostile as well. So I told you he appointed Mary McLeod Bethune, I'm hopefully pronouncing that right, to a position with, I think it was the NYA. Which gives me a chance to talk about something else here. We'll see a slide in a minute. Well, I'll just do it now. Okay. Another example was there was a singer named Marian Anderson. Okay? She was black. She was trying to book a concert hall in, I think, Washington, D.C., and they wouldn't, let her use the facility because of her color. And so the White House arranged for her to sing at the Lincoln Memorial. I think Eleanor Roosevelt was involved with this, which gives me a chance to go back and talk about something that I didn't mention earlier. I talked about Eleanor Roosevelt, that she was, the joining piece between Theodore Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt. She was a very active first lady. Now remember, Franklin Roosevelt, is in a wheelchair. So there's two things I'll tell you here. One, a lot of people didn't know this. Okay? It was kind of an open secret. I mean, the press would know it, but pictures of Franklin Roosevelt in his wheelchair are not real common. Some do exist, but newspapers didn't print them. Okay? Roosevelt didn't want to be seen, as being weak, physically infirm, because that might, hurt people's images of him as a leader. Okay? Things were different. I mean, now the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, is in a wheelchair. I mean, everybody knows it. Okay, and certainly a lot of people knew Roosevelt was in a wheelchair. But remember, there's no television back then. Okay, so the newspapers just wouldn't print those kind of photos. And they would play certain little tricks. Roosevelt would tour things from cars. He would be in the back of a convertible. They'd pull into a factory, on a drive-by inspection tour, or don't have time to get out, security issues, etc. He would just stay in the car. He also could stand. He had leg braces, so he could stand with the aid of these braces for short periods of time, especially had something to lean on. Okay, so often there's a security man nearby escorting him, who's actually one of the reasons he's there is to make sure Roosevelt doesn't fall over. Okay? One of the other professors told me this story, and she specialized in the New Deal, so I tend to see no reason not to believe her. If he was going to do a public speaking engagement, they might have a lectern, behind a curtain. Okay, and he could do the Frankenstein walk out with some aid to the podium, lock the braces, grab the podium, and they could go, "Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States." Pull the curtain aside. He's already standing. So they did certain things to try to keep his paralysis hidden from folks. Yeah. Now, how does this tie back in with Eleanor Roosevelt? Well, since Franklin Roosevelt is hard for him to get out and get around, Eleanor Roosevelt, in many ways, acts as his legs. Okay? He will send her to go investigate things. Oh, I've heard that things are, bad out so-and-so. Go take a look. So there's all kinds of pictures of Eleanor Roosevelt in a coal mine, okay, doing all kinds of things. So she could go out, she could get around, she could see things, and then go back and tell Franklin Roosevelt what she'd seen. Okay. So I believe she was involved in arranging for Marian Anderson to sing at the Lincoln Memorial. There was never a picture here. Okay. I mean, look at the size of this audience. I mean, a lot of people want to hear this woman sing, black and white. Right? So not everybody's, a racist jerk. Okay, I mean, there's plenty of them around, but I mean, a lot of people showed up to hear this woman sing at the Lincoln Memorial. Okay, so don't always want you to dwell on the bad all the time. There's lots of good going on too. But anyway, things like this are one of the things, like I said, that help start shifting the black voting base over towards the Democratic Party from the Republican Party. Roosevelt's seen as probably the friendliest president to them in quite some time. Okay, all right. Let's sum this thing up. This New Deal. It's huge. It's massive. It's a very long lecture. Okay, it's an overwhelming number of agencies and stuff. But the agencies all did different kinds of things, and that's one reason we need to talk about them. Okay? So summary and significance. So this summary is a little more important than some of the other summaries. Okay? Immediate results of the New Deal. Did the New Deal end the Depression? No. Okay. The U.S. is still technically in depression when World War II comes along. What restores the economy is the massive spending for World War II. Basically full employment. I mean, there's a labor shortage because they need so many bodies, either in the military or in industry building things. So World War II ends the Depression. And they will spend much more money on World War II than they ever would have spent on the New Deal. The difference is people might be more motivated to cinch up their belt and buy war bonds. I don't think you'd get a lot of people maybe buy depression bonds. Hey, buy a savings bond, help fight the depression. But people will make sacrifices during the war. So the immediate result does not end the depression. But maybe it helped us get through the depression. Okay, got money into people's pockets, got some jobs out there, made the suffering a little bit less. Now, some people argue that if a government hadn't gotten involved in the economy, that it actually spent all that money, that eventually business would have corrected on its own. And it certainly might have, but we can't roll back the tape and see what would have happened. It might not have. Okay. So immediate result is it helps relieve the human suffering that's going along with the Great Depression. Yeah. Another result, and this one may sound a little far-fetched, and I'm not necessarily sure I buy it myself, but maybe it helped preserve our democratic republic. I mean, think about it. What are a lot of countries doing in the 1930s when faced with this massive worldwide depression? Places like Germany. Yeah? A lot of countries turn towards, extreme types of government, fascism. Okay? Of course, the Soviets had gone communist during World War I, actually. Okay? So I don't know that democracy would have failed in the United States without the New Deal, but certainly we came out with our institutions intact. Right? All right. I think I'm missing one. Okay. Let's look at some long-range results. One, it greatly increased the size of the United States government. Prior to this, you maybe dealt with the government when you got your mail, or if you were in the army during the war. But the New Deal greatly expands the power of the federal bureaucracy, okay, which we still have today. Now, one problem, this is a bone of dissension, controversy today is it's like the bureaucracies become a fourth branch of government, but nobody gets to elect them. They're under the control of the executive branch, but are they? And they're making decisions and they're writing regulations that can affect your life, and that concerns some people. It also starts deficit spending because they can't pay for all this. Okay? Now, World War II is what really runs up the debt because we have to spend so much money doing that. But there are, people today look at the fact we have a $20 trillion debt and they look back at Roosevelt and say, this is where you start all of it. Okay. Another long-range result is it makes an entire generation of people loyal Democrats. Okay? Remember, the Democrats had only won the White House like twice since the Civil War. They won with Grover Cleveland. They won with Woodrow Wilson. Okay? And Wilson might have only won because of the split between Taft and Roosevelt. But Theodore Roosevelt. But the New Deal helps make an entire generation of loyal Democratic voters. And from this point on, the Democrats and Republicans are banging back and forth in the White House all the time. When I first started working for Sears, when I was not much older than you students are, there was an elderly lady working there. She seemed elderly to me. She's probably younger than I am now. But we were talking about politics. I think it was election year. And she said, this was in like the 1970s. Okay, she says, Daddy told me never to vote for a Republican because when we had Republicans in the White House, we got the Great Depression. So, true story. So, there's an entire generation of loyal Democrats come out of this thing. Another long-range result, and this is kind of me, just my own personal opinion, I think it kind of sets the default switch for the Democratic Party for we need a program. We need a government action of some kind. Now, don't get me wrong. Many times, maybe the government reaction is the right thing. Maybe we need a government program. Maybe there's something the government can do to fix a problem. Okay, it's back to progressive ideas. But I think partially because of the New Deal, but it's almost like the default setting on the Democratic Party now, that if there's a problem, the first thing they think of is, well, the government needs to do something. And, maybe that is what needs to be done sometimes. But it's almost like in their DNA now. If they see a problem, let's start a government program. And sometimes these programs don't fix the problems. Right? Sometimes they do. Sometimes they cause a new problem in the process of fixing the first problem. And a lot of this goes back to the New Deal, the mindset. But we'll actually get more of this later when we get to the 60s, if we get that far, with Lyndon Baines Johnson. Right? All right. So we'll have to come back to that. I'm running out of time here, so let me just sum up the conservative, radical, and liberal critiques of the New Deal. If you're conservative, this is easy. The government's spending way too much money. They're getting too involved in people's lives. And they're running up rating, spending money like crazy. Okay. The radical critique of the New Deal, though, would be that the government didn't do enough. In the end, Roosevelt, who was from a rich family, didn't take advantage of the banking crisis to try to nationalize the banks. He didn't try to take over industries. If you're a communist, and there were communists, in the 1930s, looking at the broken system, saying there's got to be a better way. If you're a communist, this was a lost opportunity. People who are desperate are willing to try new things. Okay? And so if you're a communist or a really, really hardcore socialist, you're like looking at Roosevelt and say, see, in the end, given the opportunity to take America in a new direction, he stayed true to his rich aristocratic roots and found ways to help business. Okay? The liberal critique, if you're a modern day type liberal category, the New Deal is about as good as it gets. We're talking about an activist government doing things, trying to help people, trying new ideas, showing leadership. Maybe the only critique that you might be able to have if you're that style liberal is that Roosevelt could have done a better job of convincing people that he wasn't a staunch communist, that he was trying to preserve the capitalistic system. So that's the weakest of the three, but that's what's in the notes. All right. I could go on for another 3 or 4 minutes, but I really won't because I'm looking at that clock on the side of the thing here, and we're almost out of time. So let's call it a day on Lecture 11. You can read about this in the book. I'm going to put up notes about that. And this is the last lecture that will be on the midterm exam.